Welcome. It's good to be with you again, my friends. I'm Jim Ellermeyer, a behavioral health therapist and the sponsor of Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations. Perhaps some of you have listened to some of our over 400 episodes where we help people explode into their lives through full impact mindfulness. And also what we're looking for is to not help people find themselves. We're looking for people to create themselves. And if we can give an assist along that, we certainly would appreciate it. And we always appreciate the comments and suggestions that you give. So let the games begin. And today I'm joined by my good friend, co-host, and producer of this program, Mr. Mike.
Hello, good to be back with you once again, Jim.
Yes, the sun's shining in Pittsburgh, and we hope the sun's shining in your life also. However, usually it's slate gray season in Pittsburgh here. However, it seems to be slate gray season in a lot of people's lives, Mike.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I wanted to kind of bring that up today. It feels like, no matter where you're at in or anything like that, especially in the landscape here in the US right now, here on this early February, we'll pin that right here. No matter what side of the fence that you were on politically and beliefs or stuff, there's kind of a lot of chaos right now, a lot of uncertainty happening. At the top of the chain here in the country, and I wanted to kind of just take a moment to remind people, how do we deal with those times of uncertainty that are out of our control, such as now?
Well, these times of chaos, and some people do call it chaos, and minds of uncertainty. I hear a lot of some of my female patients say they're not going to have children because they don't want to bring a child into this type of environment, all the uncertainty and chaos that is existing. However, people were having families and children during World War I, World War II, during the Black Plague in Europe, during Vietnam, during the Great Depression, all these times of uncertainty, and we seem to get along.
One thing that was really stunning to me, I had an opportunity to see the Bob Dylan movie a couple of weeks ago, and it's in the middle of everything that's happening now, and so many of my friends are having issues dealing with the news every day and the bombardment, and too many of my friends have had things that actually have directly affected them, unfortunately. And I watched this movie, and a lot of it was through the 60s. And it was a lot of like there was a depiction of what was happening like in New York City during the Cuban Missile Crisis and JFK and the lead up into the Vietnam War, and you realize between that, or even looking back to like the World War II era, how dark it was. Like it felt like the end to everybody then, but we persevered and had a very positive, I'd say peaceful-ish 30 years right in this country. So it just seems like I feel like I'm hoping this is just another phase, like that will come through on the other side.
Well, to add some context to that time of fear back in the early 60s, of course, aging myself, I was a very young man at that time. I was in elementary school. However, I remember that all of the male teachers had been gone into the military. They've been called up to the reserve. All the male teachers were gone. Yeah. And we would have air raid drills. We would have people were buying bomb shelters. They were digging in their backyard, and there would be, when the sirens would blow, we would have to go into our house and try to go into the basement or try to get somewhere where we would be safe. That was, for a young child, that was frightening.
That is a perpetual fear that is now infecting your everyday. Is it much akin to today? I cannot imagine how this is for parents and students these days. I mean, seeing a little bit. I'm starting a new job at a university, and but like when I was growing up in the 80s, 90s, the worst we had was a tornado drill. We're in Western Pennsylvania, right? And now there are active shooter drills among students. It's like I find myself lucky that I came through school between those two eras, I guess, really, because I don't remember being so afraid growing up, because we were still in the Cold War, of those kinds of things in the early to mid 80s.
Well, sure. About the only thing that we had to fear was we didn't have our homework done.
Yeah, exactly.
And you tried to fake a stomach ache that morning to try to get your mother to buy into letting you stay home
I
that
always got
day.
my homework done. I don't know what you're talking about, Jim.
But however, the amount of uncertainty that today, the higher prices, everybody seems to want to blame everybody else for these things. And uh, my thoughts are that I don't know what happened when we stopped playing on the same team, when all this divisiveness, and this divisiveness was promulgated and pot stirring, but I don't think it was by Americans, Mike. I think that type of was an outside agitators coming into the United States and trying to divide our country and divide us against ourselves.
Yeah, there's definitely something going on with it, and the tools of online and media and things like that have certainly contributed to that. But
This goes much deeper than
Mhm.
sports teams having rivalries.
No, absolutely. There's definitely some things that are happening that are pushing buttons of a carnal nature. I feel like in people, right? So how do we deal with that? I feel like some of us, me, have this like, overriding, we call it doom scrolling, where we just need to know, we're going through the news and we're going through people talking about what's happening, and we just can't stop doing that, and we're just looking for, I don't know if we're looking for a positive answer to cope and just end up in more negativity or more on the topic and no real answers out of it. Because I think that's a really big symptom of the problem or effect of the problem that a lot of people are dealing with that have empathy over the situation.
Well, when we first of all, like we always talk about on this show, we want to label and identify what the problem is and what the issue is.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's higher grocery prices, not being able to pay the rent, the price of gasoline, worrying about your children in school, worried about losing your job, those type of things, it all comes down to fear, like we've discussed so many times on this program. So once we identify the fear, then we want to determine whether that fear is justified. And as we talk about it in the 12 step world more frequently, we want to get out of the problem and get into the solution. The more we stay in the problem, the more it exasperates it, Mike.
So what about if you were, directly involved, you have friends that are losing, worried about taking care of themselves because they're on, they're linked with something, or, worried about their jobs because they're a government employee or something like that. Like that's an active direct thing, like how do you deal with that kind of existential threat?
Well, sure, you just can't make believe it's going to go
No,
away.
absolutely.
Or I know that a lot of the things in the 12 step world we talk about, one of the common phrases we use is this too shall pass. However, we want to deal with reality. We want to deal with the possibility that we may lose our jobs. We may lose our source of income. So are we going to sit and muddle in the problem and hope somebody bails us out? Or are we going to take active steps? Here's what we can do. And that may not be likable, but to develop some type of side income or lower our expectations of ourselves. Maybe we were a G12 in the government making $100,000 a year or more, and we find that we're going to be downsized. We're going to be our position was going to be eliminated or replaced by some other. We can't sit and say, well, I'm going to find myself another $150,000 job. Okay. What we do is we want to lower our expectations and say, well, for the moment, we're going to look for a $50,000 a job, and maybe we're going to have to downsize our lives to fit into that amount of income. It's going to be painful. But quite often what you and I have talked about, Mike, is accepting and dealing with discomfort.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is the hell in the hallway era for
Correct.
people, unfortunately.
Correct. You know what? And again, for those who we've discussed this quite a few times on the program, there's a Pollyannish type of view that some people give and says, God doesn't close one door without opening another. And that's true. However, what we say is it can be hell in the hallway. So in these type of times, we say, okay, welcome to the hallway. Let's develop the coping skills that we need to deal with the hallway. And it's not just feigning ignorance or avoidance or justification or denial.
And I guess the biggest thing is not to be tied down with the anger, which is going to be the hardest thing, right? Because a lot of this is just a lot of shock and awe, right? And how do you just need to not let that paralyze that. I know, easier said than done, right?
It's easier said than done, but however, if you're going to be downsized at work, if you're going to be demoted into another position, which means less responsibility and less pay, you can rail against the injustice of the establishment putting you in that position, or you can say, we talk about radical acceptance. Acceptance is the key to change. Acceptance is always the prelude to change. Always. And once we accept that situation, that we're going to be knocked out of our $150,000 a year job and we can find a $50,000 a year job, then we accept that. As much as we don't like it, it doesn't mean approval, but we have to accept the fact and get into how are we going to get into the solution. So the point is, with everyone out there today, is when you've identified the problem, don't sit in it, avoid it. And if you have a friend that's constantly talking about the problem, you might want to say to him, let's talk about a solution. And that is my gift to everyone today. Let's try to work toward a solution.
Absolutely. Some good advice there for anybody out there dealing with things going on, whatever's happened today, last week, or what's happening here in the future, because we know it's going to be a bumpy road here for a lot of people out there, especially those around the government in the next few weeks, months, etc. So,
Okay, so at the end of every podcast, what we do is we give a free prescription that you can even fill yourself, and that's fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Unplug your television, please, and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we suggest that you fish without bait. And do a kindness for yourself and do a kindness for another. Forgive yourself and forgive another. If we're all not the Creator's children, and none of us are, till all are free, none are free. Namaste, my friends.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.